What does outsourced accounting cost and why? So what exactly does outsourced accounting cost? How much is it going to cost your business to have a true accounting function? Now, accounting is a necessary evil if you're going to run a business, if you're going to have your own business, if for no other reason than for tax purposes. Now, I don't just mean federal income taxes and state income taxes. I mean sales taxes, payroll taxes, all those sorts of things. At the very, very least, you need to have a good accounting function to support those. But also, and you've heard me talk about this before, you need to have a good accounting function to support your business. So if you've ever seen the show The Profit, Marcus Lemonis always says to every business owner, what are your numbers? Do you know your numbers? Well, if you don't know your numbers, then you can't make decisions based on your numbers. So that's the problem. Hey everybody, my name is Chris Hervishon with SOAR, A Better Way CPA. Let's connect. Chris at betterwaycpa.com. That's my email address. Phone number's up there. You can hit me on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. You can also follow me on Quora, where I post content quite frequently. And let's engage. So if you have questions while this video is airing, please, by all means, send them over. There's a little bit of a delay, so I'm going to try to get to them as quickly as possible. But by all means, if you have questions while I'm going through this, send them my way. So the problem is, like I said, accounting is a cost to your business, but it is in fact a necessary evil. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through how much does that cost. So you've got three options as far as an accounting function: DIY, insourcing, and outsourcing. So do it yourself, insourcing, meaning you're going to hire people, but they're going to be inside of your company, or outsourcing, meaning that you're going to send it out somewhere, some other company is going to do it for you. So DIY, is this you, right? So you're the business owner, you're working in your business, meaning you're going to be doing your accounting, your own accounting. Are you buried in paperwork? You might look like this guy. Now the cost, I'll go back one. So the cost of DIY is really the cost of your time, right? Now, how do you figure out what the cost of your time is? Well, if you're a consultant, if you're billing yourself out by the hour, whatever your hourly rate is, that's the cost of your time. Now, if you're not one of those people, if you operate differently, then here's what I would tell you if you were my client. How much money would you have to make per hour for you to miss your kid's basketball practice or basketball game? That's your hourly rate. So whatever time you're going to be spending in your business doing your accounting, that's how much it's costing you every hour that you're going through this. So that's one piece of this. The other piece of this is, are you a trained accountant? Do you have an accounting background? Have you spent time learning accounting? Now, it's one thing to go and do your bookkeeping and get everything entered into QuickBooks, but how good is that information? Is that information going to allow you to make those strategic decisions that you need to make? Good question, right? Insourcing. So here are the things you need to consider. Talent acquisition cost. So recruiter's fees. Now, recruiter's fees generally run between 15 to 25% of whatever that person's first year salary is going to be. So not cheap. Salary and benefits. So what are you going to pay that person? And then what benefits do you have to give them? Now, benefits are health insurance, could be life insurance, could be 401k or some sort of a retirement plan, other forms of insurance. Health insurance is going to be the biggest one, generally speaking here, but that's an added cost. You need to think about that. Accounting software costs. Now, if you're going to hire people in, they need some sort of software to do your work on, right? Generally speaking, that's going to run you a couple $100 a month, and I'll go through that in a little bit. But and then retaining talent. So unemployment, the current unemployment rate right now in this country is 3.7%. For accounting professionals, it's 1.7%. Now, what does that mean? It means that basically if you're an accountant, you're probably employed. And it also means that it's an accountant's market, right? They can be more selective. People can poach those accountants. So other companies come in and poach your accountants. And I mean, what are you going to do about it, right? It's a tough market if you're hiring people. Everybody seems to know that. Okay. So, okay. What's it going to cost to hire somebody? This chart shows what it's going to cost just for salary, and this goes through what I call the cost chain or the experience chain. So you start with bookkeeper on the left, you work your way up to staff 1 year, staff senior, manager, CFO. This is just salary. So a bookkeeper on the low end is going to cost you about $34,000. Now, a bookkeeper, that's going to be your data entry folks, not so much not so much compiling financial statements, not really handling anything else. This is more of a data entry function. As we move ourselves to the right on this graph, we're going to move through preparing financial statements, putting together financial controls, things of that nature. That's going to be your staff, your senior accountant, your manager. That's kind of how that moves. It's more of an accounting function. When you get to your CFO level, that's the stuff that we're going to that we've talked about before. That's your forecasting, your cash management, dashboarding, KPI management, things like that. So you're going from data entry, working through financial statements and being able to apply financial theory and financial concepts, putting internal controls in place, all the way up through developing KPIs and helping to manage and run the business in a strategic fashion. That's kind of how this moves through this chart from left to right. Now, a staff accountant, somebody who has no experience or up to 1 year experience is going to cost you $39,000 on the low end. Staff is going to cost you at least $64,000, and this is just salary. These are expensive folks, right? And like I said, this is kind of an accountant's market right now. Now, fully loaded, what does that look like? Well, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics in their most recent survey, benefits are running about 30% of wages. So basically, take whatever you're going to pay that person, multiply it by 1.3, and that's your fully loaded cost. That's what it's going to cost you to bring that person in, give them salary and benefits and stuff like that. If you're thinking, oh, I can just get by with salary, good luck, right? Like I said, this is definitely an accountant's market, and you get what you pay for, right? If you're going to offer somebody on the very low end, if we go back here, the very low end of a bookkeeper, it's going to be $33,500, so call it $17 an hour. You get what you pay for, right? And you're going to have a hard time if you can't offer that person more than somebody else can. So this is the fully loaded cost. As you can see, it gets quite expensive. So that bookkeeper that started out at $34K, really, to bring them on, it's going to cost you about $44K. Okay, so expensive. Now, if you think about that on a monthly cost, you're almost around four grand, and that's before you've even factored in software and things like that. So what kind of software are you going to need? Well, like I said, this is going to run you probably a couple $100 a month. So a couple $1,000s for the year all in. You're going to need a general ledger software. A example of that is going to be Xero, QuickBooks Online, Intact, things like that. You're going to need a payroll provider because you need to pay your people. You need to pay this. You're definitely going to need to pay this accountant that you just hired. Accounts payable. So your vendors, they're sending you invoices. How are you going to pay them? How are you going to track those costs? Sales tax. If you're selling items that are taxable in your state, then you most definitely are going to need some sort of mechanism to track that and to file sales tax returns on a frequent basis. Now, if you're not filing sales tax returns, that turns into a problem pretty quick. So you're going to want somebody who knows what they're doing in that regard. Inventory management. If you have inventory, you're probably going to need a software to track that. And then expense reporting. So if you have folks, say sales folks who are out in the field and they're incurring costs and they're submitting them to you for reimbursement, some sort of expense reporting software helps to kind of manage that process. So what does outsourced accounting cost? Good question. Now, we've already gone through the DIY. It's basically going to cost you whatever it is that is your time. We've gone through the insourcing. That's hiring an accounting professional, bringing them in, furnishing all the software to do that. So on the low end, fully loaded with benefits, we're probably looking around at least $50K. That's a little bit over $4,000 a month, right? So what does outsourcing cost? Well, if you go online and you do some Googling and you read some of the accountant forums and stuff like that, they'll tell you it's some percentage of revenue. And while that might be true in some circumstances, that's not always the case. And quite frankly, it would be a little bit irresponsible to say, oh, well, it's always 3% of revenue, or it's always 5% of revenue, whatever that is. That's just not accurate. Here's why. So here's two different clients, totally fictitious data. Client one on the left, client two on the right. Both have the same gross revenue, $1 million. Both have the same net profit, $200,000. Now, client one on the left That's going to be something maybe like a consultant, okay? Somebody who's providing their time to a client. So they've got 5 clients, they've got 4 vendors, not a really complex business from a technology or from a perspective of needing to bring in product or anything like that. A fairly simple business. Now their expenses are $600K. They just have a handful of vendors, but those vendors are expensive. They're providing a high-end service probably here. 3 employees, small consulting firm, right? And then their cost of wages is $200,000. So they're running almost $70K per employee. Fair enough, right? And that gets you down to the $200,000 net profit. This is pretty simple. At most, you're probably going to be sending 5 invoices a month. You're running payroll for 3 people. The way payroll works, the more people you have, the higher the cost is, right? It's very linear like that. And your expenses, you only got 4 vendors, so you're making 4 payments. I mean, this is like a low transaction, low volume, low velocity type business. Fairly simple, right? Well, that business is nothing like client number 2. Client number 2 has the same revenue, but they've got 500 customers. This is probably some sort of like a retail establishment. Think of it that way. 45 vendors. So if you, again, retail establishment, you're stocking your store with product. You've got a lot of different vendors to pay. You've got a lot of different inventory to track. If you're going back to those 500 customers, you're probably going to need some sort of point of sale to track those. The expenses are lower, but big deal. It's basically a volume. The volume is what's driving the complexity there as far as the number of vendors. 15 employees, you could think of these as probably part-time folks because the cost of wages is only $450,000. That gets you to $30,000 per employee. But the payroll cost is going to be substantially higher for those 15 employees as it would be for those 3 employees with client number 1. So again, very linear. But you get to the same net profit. So to say that client number 1, you're going to charge them 3% of their gross revenue, which is $1 million, $30,000 a year, whatever that works out to monthly, about $2,500, I think. It's a much different level of complexity than client number 2. Totally different. And so you can't really charge those the same way. These are things that we need to work through when we're onboarding you or when your accountant is onboarding you. These are the questions that you need to ask, right? How does my situation impact my pricing? Things like that. So this is basically a pretty quick overview of what outsourced accounting costs, what insourced accounting costs, the things that are going to impact what you're going to pay, and some of the benefits that that you will have by having a proper accounting function. It's very, very important. It's important for taxes. It's important for sales taxes. It's important for payroll taxes. It's important for strategic decision making inside of your business. It's a very important function, so don't overlook it. That's it for me. Again, let's connect. Send me an email, chris@betterwaycpa.com if you want to get a hold of me. Phone number's there. Facebook. I've got an active Facebook page. There's content on there all the time. Follow me on LinkedIn, Twitter, Quora as well. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you like this, please press the like button. Please share it with your friends and family. That helps me to grow my business. I'd really appreciate that. If you have any questions, comments, please feel free to share those as well. I'll be happy to answer those after the fact. And in the show notes, I'm going to provide some resources that provide backup for some of the things I talked about today as far as salaries and Bureau of Labor statistics and stuff like that. All the salaries that I showed you today, they come from Robert Half, which is probably one of the best salary surveys for accountants that there is. But that'll all be in the show notes. Please feel free to take a look at that. And that's it for me. Thanks again.